Never in my life have I ever been so excited for school. I'm also excited because I know that Sense and Insensitivity was technically the end of the hiatus. However, I think we all kind of knew that that episode wasn't going to be that big. The plotline with Ida and Lilith was nice, but I mean, ultimately that wasn't like a big, huge like lore or story heavy episode. And then we had Adventures in the Elements, so I mean, like, let's be real, everybody saw that in advance. But now we have the first day. Like, everyone's equally blind, nobody knows what's gonna happen, and that is so incredibly exciting. Luz is gonna go into Hexside. I feel like she's gonna get put in potions first, and then she's gonna find out that she can't do other types of magic. She's gonna sabotage herself, she's gonna get put in the Delinquent Track. Shenanigans are gonna ensue, there's gonna be that monster thing. I feel like the Delinquent Track kids are gonna save the day. If Amity ends up being in this episode, I feel like she's gonna vouch for Luz and try and get her out of the Delinquent Track, or at least try and like make a case for her for being in the like multi-track, because we know from the promo that she has like that multi-track uniform. So yeah, so those are my predictions going into this episode. But oh man, school. Never thought I'd be excited for school, but here we are. Let's go.
I'm not ready for this, Ida. Maybe we should go back.
Nah, kid, you got this. Just do what we practiced.
We're doing like a flash forward? She has her multi-track already. Where is this?
It's like Ida.
Right.
This is in the future. What is this?
Get ready.
Ready.
Now
I'm ready. Okay,
I
this is her
from another realm and trained with a
showing off her powers. Okay, there's the fanny pack. Hi, Principal Bump. Good job, Luz.
Spells cast. I've seen worse.
Oh, okay, well that's good.
Welcome, Luz, to Hexside School of Magic and Demonics.
Yay! Oh, I'm so proud of her. I feel like a proud parent or like sibling. I'm like, she did it. She got into her dream school. Now, the interesting thing is that she had that multi-track looking uniform on beforehand, but then she was back in her regular clothes. So I wonder what's going on there. And now she's in her white uniform. Oh my goodness. Ida's becoming more of a mom. I love it. Here we go.
Hey, Luz. Congrats on getting in and not being in the baby class.
Thanks, Amity. Up top.
I'm so happy. I love them so much. Oh, hey, King.
Why are
What's
you
up,
in my
man?
bag?
Oh, God.
The
Little
here filled with
trash
magic and
demon.
gold.
You did, Luz.
Oh, what? Oh,
Sorry, I was
wrong
covering all
one.
my
Wrong one,
bases.
Gus.
Excelled at a magic school like Glandis, St. Epiderm, and of course, Hexside. Are you prepared to enter these
I thought they were the founders at first, but then once he saw that the construction one was the guy at the convention, then it was like, okay, they're probably just who's in charge.
You know what? I'm gonna just
Gus.
get rid of these.
Wrong one.
Today we'll be visited by the Emperor's Coven for a routine inspection.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh, that's bad.
And now I feed.
Yes. I love that they call it Harry Potter. It's great. I'm surprised that Luz didn't pick it because of Ida, that it was just random.
The choosy hat. It broke free.
The choosy hat. Oh, this is where the Oracle magic thing happens. Oh, yeah. It's like a Pokemon battle. Oh, this poor Belle. But it's the new semester. You should be good to go, man. Are we in the Delinquent Track already? She held an orb. That was it.
You may try for a new track next year.
But I'll be back in the
Next
human
year?
world by then.
I feel like this is very good commentary on how schools like prioritize funding over their students. Oh no, oh no. Oh no.
Who wants to go on a field trip to the astral planes?
That's a kindergarten thing? This is so interesting with the magic. It reminds me of the spell, like the spell scroll that Ed and M used to get into the library.
Just messing with you. I'm Viney.
My God, I love her so much already.
I mean, so you two go to the same school now. That doesn't change anything.
Oh, Amity. Oh my God. What?
We're not allowed to study any kind of magic, so we study every kind of magic in secret.
That's smart. I like that. I feel that this is also really good commentary on how school systems are very like set. There's like a set way to teach things, and the school system forces the students to adapt to the curriculum rather than the curriculum adjusting to the students. Puddles, man. I know everyone wants a king plushie, but man, we need a Puddles plushie. Oh, hello. Who are you, Emperor's Coven
Hexside, Inspector.
person? You're probably the monster. Yep, you're definitely the monster. Oh. Oh, it like eats magic? Okay, you should probably run. You should probably run. You should probably run. You should probably run. No. Alright, lady fish demon thing. You and I, we got problems now. Is Luce gonna be able to stop it because she does paper and the delinquent kids can do mixed magic? Oh, alright, yeah, sure. Illusion magic can do that. Oh. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't work because it's paper. Ha ha ha.
But if Bump catches us mixing magic again...
He'd kick us out of school.
Okay, or you could just let everyone basically die instead. Puddles! Good job, Puddles. Oh no, not Puddles! Was that blood? Did they show blood at a Disney show? Man, Disney's showing blood in its cartoons. We are truly in a new age.
So much trouble.
Oh, come on, Bump.
But if you have to hurt your students to get it, what's the point? They say
Exactly.
Hexside. What's going
Oh
on?
yeah, magical girl. Transformation.
So cool! Yeah!
Nice.
I'm gonna study everything!
Unfortunately, she was never given the opportunity.
Yeah.
As I said in my reaction, it really feels like the first day was the end of the hiatus. Sense and Insensitivity was nice, but it wasn't a huge progression of story, and basically everyone had seen Adventures in the Elements already, so this episode hit a little bit different. Now to start off the review, we'll go over our secret messages. We already know our episode title message is a witch loses a true way, but our secret symbol is found at the very end of the episode when we see Ida flying on her staff. And this is actually a set of symbols we have seen before in Something Ventured, Someone Framed. The symbols translating to of. So our message is now, 2 witches torn apart, now alone, 2 hearts of stone, a curse of. Like I said last week, this message is leaning pretty heavily at being about Ida. But we do have 2 episodes next week, which means we'll get 2 more words, so perhaps those will give us even more to go off of. But now, let's get into our relevant plot and lore. First and foremost, Luce started her first day at Hexside. Now in the beginning, I was wondering why Luce's outfit changed from her multi-track uniform to her casual. Maybe this was an animation error, but that would seem like a huge oversight, and I don't think something like an entire outfit being wrong would get by. So maybe this is a little bit of misdirection, and this scene is actually showing us a scene from a future episode. We actually got to see Luce's assessment, which was nice, and it went about as well as you would expect Luce to do, but the important thing is she is finally enrolled and not in the baby class. Once we actually get to Hexside, we learn from Willow that these are the heads of the main 9 covens, each of which excelled at magic from Glandis, a newly revealed school, St. Epiderm, and of course Hexside. Hopefully we'll actually get to meet these individuals later on in the show, especially since it seems like the Construction Coven head was the same guy in Covention. Also, just a side note, we see Glandis' uniform, and instead of cowls like Hexside, they have these hats with these earmuff-like attachments. Not that it matters, but I definitely prefer Hexside's uniform. We also get mention of a grudge me match that Principal Bump hopes Glandis will forfeit due to the whole monster situation. We know that there is an upcoming episode, Wing It Like Witches, that will feature Grudgeby, so perhaps this will actually tie into that episode. We then get an explanation on what we already knew, that witches must select one track when attending school as per the rules from the Emperor's Coven. Also, I love the Harry Potter sorting hat call out. I am totally down with the Owl House taking jabs at Harry Potter. Luce is placed in potions, and we get to see a little bit of this track, but we also get to see the Oracle track. And this was also the shot from the post-Disney TV animation put out too early and then deleted. And then we basically get a Pokemon battle with the Oracle student and Willow with her crazy plant magic. And Dana, your love of Pokemon is showing, and I am totally in support of it. Luce literally holds an orb, and I guess this is enough to get her thrown into the Detention Track, which I thought was called the Delinquent Track, but okay, sure. Viney opens the door to the secret room of shortcuts, and the way she opens it kind of reminds me of the lock scroll that Ed and M used back in Lost in Language. Hopefully we'll learn more about scrolls and alternative ways of using magic in the future. We formally get introduced to Viney, Jerbo, and Barkus, and I will talk about this scene a bit later, I promise. But we hear about Lord Calamity, who created the secret room of shortcuts, and yeah, it's Ida. It's definitely Ida. Now, one of the things that I liked about this episode is that Viney, Jerbo, and Barkus aren't your typical delinquents and use these shortcuts to learn all forms of magic instead of just using them to cause trouble. Also, this room apparently has a bunch of astrological symbols. I'm not that into astrology, but maybe after some research I may make a separate video if any of this written on the boards could mean anything. We also find out it's possible for witches to combine different types of magic together, as we are given the examples of plant and abomination, potions and oracle, and healing and beast keeping. So I'm wondering if we will start to see other witches do the same. Especially since by the end of the episode, Bump lets all the Detention Track kids do multiple tracks. Maybe we'll start to see Willow, Gus, Amity, Ed, or Em experiment with this concept. We then get introduced to the Greater Basilisk, a creature that supposedly should be extinct, but feeds off the magic of witches. And it seems that a witch's magic is actually tied to their life force. We also learn that Principal Bump, although we don't know if he is a witchling or not, but whatever species he is, he lives for a very long time, considering he has 300 years until retirement. So just a small detail there. More small details are found on this board here, and we can actually see a poster for the Human Appreciation Society featuring Mytholomule. Now, something interesting that we learn about Gus's magic is that it can actually act as a buff, as we see when he literally gives Willow's plant buff arms. Out of all the tracks, Illusion seems to be the most variable and has a wide variety of spells. So from now on, I'm just going to always be curious when Gus, Ed, or Em perform any magic. Now, as expected, since Luce doesn't perform magic the typical way, her magic cannot be eaten by the Basilisk. This leads to her teaming up with Viney, Jerbo, and Barkus. And of course, because they do combine magic, they end up saving the day. Also, we're showing blood now. Disney's got blood in this show, and it's not just like the little scrape or scratch thing. No, we got actual droplets. It truly is a new decade for Disney. But if we can get blood in our Disney shows, then we could get 2 gay witches. We find out that Bump also didn't know about the secret hideout, and since it was Ida's originally, maybe we'll find other things related to Ida that Bump has yet to discover. Now, when Luce is talking to Principal Bump, I do like the commentary of how schools prioritize funding over their students. I thought that was a nice touch, and this does eventually lead to Bump allowing Luce, along with the others, being able to study all tracks of magic. We even get a magical girl transformation for Luce. And of course, at the end, we get the reveal that Lord Calamity is Ida. Oh yeah, and King was a teacher in this episode, and he's actually pretty good at it. Now, as I expected, this was definitely going to be a more lore and story-focused episode. We learned a lot about Hexside and more about how magic works in this world, specifically with the combining of magic. And I hope that we see more of this in the future, and I also hope that we use the secret room of shortcuts again at some point. But with all the plot and lore out of the way, let's get into some character development. Now, like I just said, this episode focused a lot more on story and how magic functions. So there wasn't as much character development, especially compared to the last episode, Adventures in the Elements. But we'll first start off with Ida, who was barely in this episode at all, only in the beginning. And I like that we are seeing Ida's more maternal side. When Luce is supposedly going in for her assessment, again, we don't know where this scene actually takes place in the show, we see how supportive and encouraging she is. And when flying her to school, we see her reassuring Luce, telling her not to worry about going to school. But of course, Ida is still Ida, and at the end of the day, she is going to give advice like punching students to assert dominance and not being a goody two-shoes. But come on, Ida, this is Luce. We know she'll find a way into trouble regardless. Next, we'll go over King, who, much like Ida, didn't have a lot of screen time. Now, when King assumes the role of teacher, I honestly thought it was going to go horribly wrong. But to my surprise, King actually ended up being pretty good as a teacher. I don't think he really taught anything of use to the class, but his students seemed to respect and appreciate him. This kind of reminds me in Once Upon a Swap, where King was pretty easily able to gain the respect of the teens. So it seems like King, at least when he wants to, is pretty good at relating to teens, which earns their respect. Next, we'll go over Willow and Gus, who throughout the whole episode were supportive friends to Luce, welcoming her at the front entrance and then trying to bust her out of the detention track. And they even back her up when she was making a case to Bump to allow the study of multiple tracks. So not much development on their end, but this episode reinforced how good of friends they are to Luce. But we know that we have really small problems, which will feature Willow and Gus, and of course understanding Willow, where we will obviously learn a lot more about Willow. Now we'll move on to Amity, and honestly I was planning on putting Amity in the same category as Willow and Gus. because we see, much like in Adventures in the Elements, Amity is being much friendlier and being supportive to Luce, congratulating her on getting in and not being in the baby class. And also, I just want to point this out, look at how tiny Amity's hand is here. Now, my plan on just grouping Amity with Willow and Gus for this episode got thrown out the window when this scene happened.
Where do the doors go? So you two go to the same school now. That doesn't change anything. Huh?
Like, Dana and the crew could have put anything in this scene. This could have shown literally anything in the entire school, but Dana and the crew chose to have this scene play out. And there's pretty much only one person who Amity could be referring to here, considering she says you two go to the same school now. She's talking about Luce. Amity then says that doesn't change anything, which seems to imply that Amity is thinking about how Luce attending school now could potentially affect their current friendship. And given to the sigh that she lets out, she seems to have a lot on her mind regarding this topic. Also, I like how Amity is just talking to herself about this in the middle of a hallway during school. But this also shows how much this is impacting her and how important Luce's friendship is to her. And again, literally anything at Hexside could have been what Luce saw, but Dana and the crew chose this. Also, we have Grom in 2 weeks, just saying. We'll move on to Viney, Jerbo, and Barkus, who honestly I thought would be in this episode more. Especially if you were like me and saw the 2 clips of these 3 beforehand, that accounted for a good chunk of their screen time. I do like all of them, especially Viney. Out of the 3, she was given more individuality. And like I mentioned earlier, I like that they aren't your typical troublemakers or bad students. They just like learning about all kinds of magic and have a different way of doing things. And they use the shortcuts to continue to learn from other classes. I liked this a lot since it doesn't follow the usual delinquent trope. I'm hoping we get more of them in future episodes. Like I said, I do like them, I just feel like there wasn't a lot of screen time with them. So maybe we'll get some episodes later on where we can check up on them and see how their multi-track learning is going. Also, Puddles is adorable and she must be protected at all costs. Next, we'll go over Principal Bump, who out of everyone in this episode changed the most. I've honestly liked Bump. He doesn't strike me as the stereotypical school principal who is a jerk to their students. He genuinely seems to care about his students, but also feels the pressure from the Emperor's Coven to maintain order and follow the rules to secure funding. And this commentary on how schools prioritize funding and also how set in stone school curriculums are and force students to adapt to it rather than for it to adapt around the students was really nice to see in my opinion. Because the American school system is not the greatest, so seeing these issues being brought up is welcome from my perspective. Now, I will say that while Bump does have a change of heart, it does happen kind of quick. Like the beginning of this episode, Bump was like, yeah, no way you're learning different kinds of magic. And even after being saved by Luce and the group, his immediate reaction to them performing combined magic was anger. But after hearing Luce's speech, he acknowledges that he made a mistake, which is nice to see, but it did feel a little bit rushed for this episode. Again, there was a lot going on and a lot of different characters involved, so I get why, but I just hope we get more development with Bump in future episodes. Lastly, Luce, and similar to everyone else besides Bump, she doesn't necessarily take any big steps with her development, but rather reinforce characteristics and traits we have seen before. We see her being nervous about starting school and being seen as a screw-up, and this reminds me a lot of the Luce that we saw in A Lying Witch and a Warden. So I like that it's not like Luce has completely gotten over her insecurities of being seen as a weirdo or a screw-up. I've never liked when a character goes through one episode and then all of their insecurities are gone, so it's just a reminder that despite how optimistic Luce is, she still has her self-doubts. We also see how determined she is to learn magic, which we have seen continually throughout the series, wanting to enroll in multiple tracks and try out all kinds of magic. Once in the Detention Track, we see how Luce stands up for Viney and the others when the teacher threatens to have them all mop the floors, to which Luce takes the blame for, and again, it's just nice seeing Luce standing up for others and doing the right thing. Once Luce and the Detention Track kids have their misunderstanding, it actually reminded me of how Luce acted with Amity in Lost in Language. When Amity told her to go away, Luce didn't really argue with her, she just apologized and accepted her decision, much like in the situation here with Viney, which I think shows maturity on Luce's part for understanding when she's made a mistake and accepts her consequences. Once the Basilisk starts attacking the school, Luce is able to convince Viney, Jerbo, and Barkus to help her out, and the group are eventually able to save the school. And like I said before, Luce stands up to Principal Bump to allow multi-track magic learning, allowing herself and the others to enroll in multiple tracks at Hexside. But that was the first day. I did enjoy this episode, and I am so excited that we will be coming back here more often because there is probably so much more to discover and explore. I think compared to other episodes, this one felt the most rushed, but again, there was a lot going on and many different characters, so it's understandable. The thing I liked the most about this episode was the commentary on the American school system. I thought the show presented it in a way that made it easy to understand and highlight issues we are dealing with in the real world. I hope we get to see Viney, Jerbo, and Barkus again soon because I see a lot of potential in them as characters, and I was a bit disappointed that we only got to spend a little bit of time with them. So hopefully we'll get some more guest appearances from them, and Puddles too, of course. But next week we have 2 episodes, Really Small Problems and Understanding Willow. And guys, I am not ready to get punched in the feels by Dana and the crew with Understanding Willow. That episode is going to answer so many questions we have about Willow and Amity, so we have plenty to look forward to next week. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you have a fantastic day, and until next time guys, take care.